AI Chat GPT?
Exactly. It's ChatGPT. Exactly. So I guess I eventually want to get to is what is the ChatGPT going to be for digital pathology? And maybe we can have some predictions. But first, this ChatGPT is a real thing. Everybody that I talk to, they use it in some way, shape, or form. I'm personally scared to use it because I'm afraid. I'll give you my concern as a member of society is that I think chatbot GPT can write pretty well for people. And are we going to lose our writing skills?
Learn about the newest digital pathology trends in science and industry, meet the most interesting people in the niche, and gain insights relevant to your own projects. Here is where pathology meets computer science. You are listening to the Digital Pathology Podcast with your host, Dr. Alexandra Zhurov.
We did it again, and we're gonna do it on a regular basis. I met again with Giovanni and David Tullman from the Digital Pathology Association podcast Beyond the Scope, and we officially agreed we're gonna be meeting every 6 months at least and talking about the hot topic. And yes, you guessed, we are gonna be talking AI in this episode, and we are gonna be talking about ChatGPT. So let's dive into it.
Hey everyone, welcome back. This is our second crossover podcast with Aleks and Giovanni. Hello.
Hello.
Aleks, how are you?
Good. Great to be back with you. I'm super excited. I'm always super excited to talk to you guys. So I'm super happy to be here again.
Yeah,
Same here. Very excited. Happy to see you again. Happy to share with you.
What we're doing today is we want to get together a couple times a year and just talk about some of the hot topics that us well-read individuals follow. We also host our podcast, so we talk to some of the experts, and maybe we like to think that we're
better-read individuals who.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe we like to think that we're at the forefront of what's going on, and here's a chance for us to talk as a group about what we're seeing, and hope you guys enjoy it. So we're going to talk about the year of AI. We're going to talk about CPT adoption and how that's going, the new digital pathology CPT codes. And we're going to be talking about a subject that is very near and dear to my heart, software, hardware integration. I might end up having a cry session at the end, depending on how that goes.
Let's see if we can have some cool exchange, David, about this.
We'll see. I don't know. That's something that's obviously one of the main things that I develop, and yeah, it causes a lot of headaches. So we'll see. Who wants to go first? Who wants to do the topic first?
Let's start with the year of AI, because AI, I think, is going to be definitely important for my topic as well.
All right, cool. So here's the premise. Earlier this year, I think it was the Atlantic magazine came out with an issue stating that this is the year of AI. And I think one of the main...
Is that the first time they stated this? Or did they do it last year?
It's probably not the first time they've stated it, but I think it's extremely relevant and appropriate to talk about it, because what is the hottest topic on the planet, on the internet right now? It's
AI, Chat GPT?
Exactly. It's Chat GPT. So exactly. So I guess I eventually want to get to is what is the Chat GPT going to be for digital pathology? And maybe we can have some predictions. But first, this Chat GPT is a real thing. Everybody that I talk to, they use it in some way, shape, or form. I'm personally scared to use it because I'm afraid. I'll give you my concern as a member of society is that I think chatbot GPT can write pretty well for people. And are we going to lose our writing skills?
Maybe.
I'm scared of that. I place incredible value on writing skills, and now you have the younger generation that's going to class, and they have to they wait till everyone else, they wait till the last minute to go to write their essay the night before it's due, and oh look, you got Chat GPT right there that can just write it for you. It's a scary concept to me.
I can tell you, I lost completely. And it's not that I had a big sense of orientation. It was always very broken to start with. But now with all this GPS system, location, maps, I don't even pay attention anymore of where I'm going.
Me too.
Everywhere I go, I have to put the map to take me back home because I'm completely unoriented. And I just relinquish any... Again, I wasn't good to start, but the few orientation capabilities that I had, they got rusty and probably disappeared. I don't regret it. I'm okay with that.
Let me tell you about my use of ChatGPT and to comment on if we're going to be losing our writing skills. Probably yes. And then it's going to be taken to a new baseline where, because I use it a lot for content creation for social media. And then I prompt this ChatGPT. So you give this bot a question and it answers you the question. For example, let's say we have this podcast and I'm going to ask ChatGPT, hey, give me a one-pager summary based on the transcript of this podcast and use a few bullet points. And it gives me this one-page summary. And then I go through this summary because let's say 30% of it is not so coherent. And then a little bit of that doesn't really sound like in the voice that I'm usually talking to my people. So I go through it, I adjust it, and then it's mine and it's faster. So that's how I use it. But I'm with Giovanni. I'm like terrible with maps. Without GPS, I will not get anywhere.
Yeah. Aleks, that's really interesting. You use it in that way because it's somewhat of a correlation to how we're trying to use it in pathology. We are feeding in imaging data and it's spitting back to us some kind of results about a diagnosis, but it's not telling us this is the diagnosis. It's suggesting that this may be the diagnosis or this may be where you want to look. So we're still in that phase where we need the human to put their own personal touch on it. And I use this term all the time, but essentially police the algorithm. So in your writing with ChatGPT, you are still policing what's being written. You're still taking essentially the first draft and you're making it in your own voice. And I think it's same with where we are in artificial intelligence, like real clinical applications in pathology is, we're getting suggestions, but we're still like the human pathologists are still making the final calls.
Yeah, I'm very strong on QCing the algorithm, on policing the algorithm, on when you have the algorithm metrics, performance metrics, you have the numbers, and even the numbers, like they're already in the 90s, they're already in, when you compare to pathologists, they're either non-inferior or even superior or a combination, like for the PAGE algorithm that is a computer-aided diagnosis. It shows where the pathologist is supposed to look for prostate cancer, right? It has high numbers, but you still have to visually check if it's not producing those numbers from some funky places that don't have anything to do with what you're looking for. So in this way, I just think AI is another tool. In terms of society, David, my husband is with you. He thinks it's very disruptive for society, and a lot of people are gonna lose their jobs because data entry or this type of transcript is their job, which yes, probably is going to be the case, but it was the case when cars were invented and when trains were invented and when other technological revolutions happened. It has a double-edged sword. It is a double-edged sword.
Giovanni, are you using any AI tools in your day-to-day?
As a test only, we haven't been able to deploy any algorithms, but we are testing them using parallel. Like I do my diagnosis and I use the AI, I compare the AI to what I'm doing, but I don't report any of the AI exclusively. I just my separate report of what the correlation is.
Sure.
And hopefully all these preliminary observations will end up in a paper that we plan to publish. Yes. In different areas, we have general algorithms, we have the more sophisticated AI that makes actually diagnosis and classifies tumors. And I'm delighted testing it.
What's it going to take for you to actually deploy one of these algorithms for real clinical use?
I think when we finish with this process, with this kind of been like an ongoing validation, because we haven't set the number when we're going to finish, but when we feel comfortable, that's one side, and the other is when we have a full integration. We don't want to, right now we have all these algorithms on a separate parallel flow, so meaning you have to export the image to whatever other software you are using and then do the analysis, and then you transfer whatever decision or whatever conclusion you have from the AI into your report. And in order for us to be able to do this in a big scale with all the pathologists, remember that this includes people who are not technology savvy, people who are not that happy about digital or AI to start with. So we need to make this a very easy process with just a few clicks. Having to exit one system to get into another one and come back, it's not really sustainable for a big department. I think it's only doable if you have a highly motivated pathologist to do all these extra steps.
These are some words of wisdom, Giovanni.
Yeah.
I think you should always start with those highly motivated people, not to discourage those who are not that motivated, and let those motivated figure out all the kinks, and then all the others have a smooth ride and can basically benefit from this without having to troubleshoot, because every time somebody is doing something first, there's troubleshooting as part of the deal. If you're not willing to troubleshoot, then maybe that's not the best thing for you to do.
So the premise for this topic was, in popular science or popular culture, this has been coined the year of AI. So the question is this the year of AI for pathology? And even further, what is the ChatGPT of pathology going to be? I think we've already answered the question. And Giovanni, I'm probably going to have to agree with you on this one, that the answer is no, this is probably not the year of AI for pathology.
I've heard the same. Not quite yet.
Just because I think we need to continue to take baby steps to get there, because the tools we have available are great, but they are complex and they require a lot of buy-in from individuals that I don't think they're not quite there yet in terms of the motivation.
No, definitely no. And I think when we have the technology that's going to be able to be self-sufficient, that you don't need to babysit it, then it's when everybody will be able to buy in, knowing that, of course, the final decision will be the physician's decision who's making the diagnosis, right? But at least he will get the AI opinion or input in a direct way, in a direct, straight way, that they don't have to be hesitant about if there is an error that they made when they were trying to process information.
So then the second part of this is, what would the Chat GPT for pathology look like? And the ideal pie in the sky idea is you drag an image into this platform and it tells you literally every single thing about it. If you look at what's out there in the market, there are a lot of platforms that can tell us a lot already. We have platforms that some are FDA approved to tell us diagnosis. We have these really cool research platforms that can now tell us incredible amounts of detail from an image about a tumor microenvironment. They can tell us incredible amounts of information about a single cell. But I think we're falling short on, and that needs to be part of this new platform, is algorithms need to start, or developers need to start looking at, how can we use AI past what human pathologists are looking at? Can we look at it? Can we develop algorithms to look at images to find things that we, like pathologists, haven't been trained to see? So the first couple of things that come to mind are prognostic biomarkers. Can we find things that help predict treatment outcomes? Yeah, Aleks, go ahead, chime in. You got something. You got something on. Sorry.
Otherwise, I'm gonna keep talking.
Just go. It's fine.
No, I'm gonna raise my hand whenever I have a comment. You can decide who speaks. But spoiler alert, for this very topic, you know who agreed to join my podcast? Hopefully, we're gonna be recording in April. Nant Madabushi, who is very much working in this space, developing or predicting biomarkers from H&E. And my very question is, okay, we have this in the research space, and it's every week you have a new paper, which marker was predicted. What will it take to get it into the clinic? What kind of validation? Because visual validation by pathologists, what Giovanni is doing, they're doing it. You guys are doing it. Once this is done, you have confidence. The final say is the pathologist, and we figure out how not to babysit AI. What about like this, what you're mentioning, David, the predictions, the prognosis from image, without knowing like where it comes from, but basically trusting that it is correct. Yeah. So I hope to ask him, like we mentioned at the beginning, we often invite very smart and very well-read people, so I consider him to be somebody like that. Let's see what he says. Another comment, and then I close my mouth for a little bit, is, so ChatGPT, if we want to translate it into images, that would be what we just said. But we can also use the language models for pathology, and I have seen companies working in that space that are supporting reporting. So Giovanni, do you guys dictate things for reports?
Yeah, we have a dictaphone, which is actually very good. And but I personally prefer to do the input myself with codes, build a report myself. I just find that it's easier because that way I can check it at the same time and release it and don't have to go back. But we do have a dictaphone machine software that is very good.
So imagine if you could just like, instead of typing, you could say, hey, my Pathology Chat GPT, could you put this code here and that code here and that? I don't know, you probably have like specific building blocks of the report. That's how I remember it from veterinary diagnostics. That's you know your diagnosis, you say, oh, 0.01, paste there. If you could just do it with voice without going into the computer. I would imagine this to be the like direct translation of ChatGPT into pathology. I could use this for my reports as well, only I couldn't because a lot of this is very proprietary information. So it would have to be something that is in-house built for human medicine, HIPAA compliant, for labs, GLP compliant, and not some like open source thing where everybody can paste like all the transcripts of whatever they're doing. It would have to be very secure. So that would be my concern about that.
The reporting, that is a really intriguing idea. And I hope people are listening, innovators are listening to this and getting to work on that right now, because when I talk to pathologists, like one of their top pain points and inefficiencies is indeed the reporting. So anything we can do to help, right?
Something that is very overdue is the fact that in pathology, for instance, we have all these different diagnostic buckets, right? We are surgical pathology, we deal with the images, but all the other laboratory divisions are also part of pathology, hematology, chemistry, immunology, cytogenetics, molecular. If you can combine everything into one succinct, comprehensive, yet succinct report that the clinician can look at it and see everything together without having to be checking for labs over here, labs over there, everything comes digested to you. Morphology, immunology, molecular. I think we need that. Go ahead.
No, you don't have to. If no one's
If no one's talking, I can just talk. I'm impossible. I know I'm notorious in interrupting people when I want to say something. It's not good for a podcast host.
I just do it. Sometimes people talk too long and you have to interrupt them. There's no way around it.
Okay, so Giovanni, I have to tell you, so in drug development, you do have something like that, but it's not automated in any way, because where you work for developing a drug and data from different places are coming in. Pathology is one piece of data. Then there's in-life data, which would be clinical pathology or some labbing. It's like a lot of data pieces, a lot of different people responsible for that. And as per FDA, the one person that's responsible for compiling this final report is study director. So they compile the report, and then when it goes and when it leaves this phase, when the study was done, it goes as a final report to the next step, which either is the sponsor who wanted this study to be conducted or regulatory agencies. And I see, if I understand correctly, you would love something like that to be at a patient level, and that ChatGPT would help.
It will help for sure the doctors, treating doctors that are trying to put everything together, especially in complicated cases like cancers, where you have so many sources of information and you have to start exploring them one by one separately. And sometimes you may miss some data that is important for this particular case, because when you go to labs, for instance, if you're reviewing the data for this particular cancer, maybe the patient had another ailment before where a multitude of immunologic tests have been ordered, and then you have to sort through all of those and find which ones are important for this particular case, rather than having all the information pertaining to this disease or this encounter in one easy to view, all-encompassing format. That's my wish for the ChatGPT. If we're asking wishes, or like, I have 3 wishes, so I'll think about the other 2.
Okay.
Sure. We got 2 more topics to cover, so I'm going to close maybe that's where you use your 2 wishes, but I'm going to close the discussion on this one and just say that I think we all agree that it is probably not the year of AI for pathology, but let's remain optimistic. Let's hope that more pathologists use the platforms that are available and get more comfortable with the assistance and the diagnosis first. That's going on this year. Perhaps, this is my prediction, is we're going to see a lot of really interesting publications about tapping into those prognostic biomarkers. And I think that'll be a very interesting development that I look forward to following this year. We have the prognosis plus the diagnosis plus some other things, maybe some ChatGPT elements. We're going to have some really cool platforms in the future, but my hope is that at the very least this year that more pathologists get on board and get more comfortable with the capabilities of AI.
Definitely. Some steps will happen.
Yep.
some forward steps for sure.
Good. All right, Aleks, your topic.
Okay, so my topic, which is integration of hardware and software, which is what you live and breathe in your business, basically is what would need to happen for Giovanni to stop babysitting all the systems. And I'm seeing, let's say there is enough confidence now in that, okay, you can diagnose, you can evaluate on a digital image. That's okay. Everybody more or less is fine with the quality of image. It's fine. It's good. But everything that is before, unlike in radiology, the analog didn't disappear. You add on top of the analog. So you scan a glass slide. You have to put those slides in the scanner. And there's so many manual steps. And what I'm seeing happen now in several companies that I interviewed on my podcast is that it's being taken to the next step where image analysis is happening at the time of scanning, doing automated QC, and there is automation involved. And by automation, I mean something beyond just barcoding the slide. Actually, like using machines, robots to pick the slide, put it in the scanner or put it in wherever, like basically automation in the lab. Automation of these things that are now an additional overhead, especially the QC. There are currently hours of manpower spent on QCing scanned slides. And when the payers or those who are responsible for that investment look at it from the outside, was it not supposed to be cheaper or faster? And you just added another full-time employee to do this job that was supposed to not be necessary anymore. So this is where this automation comes in. And David, I don't know how difficult it is to integrate. I know that I love my smartphone. It's a very nice integration of hardware and software. But if we could take the smartphone concept into the pathology lab, at least for some tasks, that would automatically increase not only the perceived, the actual value and the actual savings in digital pathology. Let me know what you think about it, and let me know how you interact with it, or how does it work in real world.
I have a lot of thoughts on that. First of all, this idea is something that will greatly help the overall adoption of digital pathology tools, mainly because the more manual, let me back up for a second. We already know that buying digital pathology hardware is expensive. You know that buying digital pathology software is expensive. And not on top of that, you have to hire more people, which adds to the expense because, like you said, there are still all these manual steps. So 3 major expenses to solve one problem, right? So that's the challenge. The question is, how can you automate some of those steps? I know a company that tried to essentially automate, like with a robot, like the entire H&E process. It's a really interesting concept, but spending a lot of time in pathology gross labs, that work is very chaotic and it's very labor intensive. And it's just a tough thing for me to imagine it in the near future being completely automated. Think about all of the manual steps that go into getting the tissue, cutting it with the microtome, the staining procedures. It's incredibly complex. So Giovanni, you're a pathologist, you spend a lot of time in the labs. How do you see this? Is it even possible to automate all those things?
Sure. I think so. Most clinical laboratories that have been doing this for decades now, where they started first doing like small steps and now they're fully automated. The only piece missing in those is the human part that probably will also be cut in a fraction of the time by AI eventually, meaning the final report will be analyzed by the AI first to give you some sort of summary that maybe you just have to approve. And in our case, I think all these steps will be automated one by one, making it here less convoluted. And even the fact that we are facilitating now, reducing the time in delivery of glass because there are no glass to deliver, then we will have to use or retrain these people to be our scan technicians or QA technicians that make sure that everything goes well, the entire process. And I think I think everything automated is not far away. I think that everybody is going to be surprised on how fast this process is going to be done just because it has been done in other areas of pathology previously. Now, what I would like to see is the glass disappear altogether and going from fresh tissue to images, virtual stains. That I think that you may have some insight.
I do. It's similar to the AI conundrum. I'm learning that it's taking baby steps to get there. And as we're doing it, we can automate some of the things, but there are some things that we create more manual steps. So it's like you mentioned in your thoughts on this that you're converting technicians to be the scan technicians. It doesn't actually solve the problem. It's just moving one manual labor intensive process to another manual labor intensive process. Because I think
at least you're not adding another one.
True. But we're just shifting one. Yeah. So I think the question is, how can you eliminate some of the manual labor when it comes to, because you still have to make the glass slides and you still have to scan them. So you mentioned how you can automate some of it, but you still need humans to do a lot of that, and that's very costly. It's very time consuming. Yes, avoiding the slide entirely would help with that, but is it going to create new manual labors elsewhere? I hope not, but I think in the time being, from what I'm seeing, because I'm doing it, the answer is yes. It's not perfect, and it's got a long ways to go.
I think it's a different type of task. I think it's less labor intensive, less physical, let's say, and more intellectual. And because previously you have people walking miles a day delivering glass everywhere, especially in a big institution like ours. Now, if you got that and you repurpose these people who want to be trained, and we found that's the best way to do it, because you provide the training, they learn new skills, they make themselves more valuable, and rather than walking miles, now they're supervising that the process is adequate. I think we always need humans involved in all these steps. Even if you have a good machine that does the QA, you still need somebody who's going to sign on that QA and letting it go, because that's something that the machines cannot do. They cannot catch their own errors. And for humans, usually it's very easy to see when the machine is making errors, because for us, are obvious. Those errors that the machine makes are if it's not something that comes in the straight lines that they are used to deal with, they just shut down and give something that is obviously not right for a human. They don't work with the system, right? If the system shows them some variation, they just can't handle it. So that's where the human comes in place. And I think we're going to see more of this task raising as the labor-intensive work goes down. And yeah, that's going to be the same story. It will make us less active. And just most of our jobs will be probably just sitting down.
Guys, are you going to Pathology Vision this year?
Yep.
Yeah. Both? Yeah.
Always, yeah.
I listened to the last time, Giovanni, you were interviewing people, right? And I listened to the CPT code interview. And why do you guys have codes for one thing, scanning slides? Like, I don't understand it.
No, they're for different purposes. Like one is for the H&E, one is for the...
Yeah, but it's scanning. It's one and the same thing. Please explain it to us. I was like, oh my goodness, so many things you're going to automate. 13 codes. That's amazing. And then I see scanning H&E, scanning IHC, scanning special stain. I'm like, but the scanner is doing the same.
Yeah, at that point, the slide is already made and you're scanning the same amount of pixels. So it's not like it's the manual process of making an H&E versus microwaving slides to get immunohistochemical stains to penetrate. So it's a good question.
I don't think the final CPTs will be this, or they may be, because what happened is that they did one CPT for H&E, one CPT for immunos, but then they vary by the type of code that you're charging. Like they have a different code for CPT and a biopsy, and then for the resection specimen.
Are they attached to the previous procedure? Like they're like at the end of each procedure instead of one thing that is happening, but there are already like many streams of CPT codes flowing into it. So you just attach another one to the, I don't know, H&E biopsy processing.
No, you just add one of these CPTs to one of your original CPTs.
Okay, yeah.
So if you have a biopsy CPT, then this will have a new code CPT for the digitization of that. And then you have immunohistochemistry that will have one that goes with the biopsy. Now, if this was a resection, it will have a different CPT here, and the CPT that you're adding is also different. Oh. And that's why you have all these numbers, because they thought about all the permutations that you can add.
Yeah, that makes sense, because what you're saying is that includes you're charging one CPT code for digital evaluation of immunohistochemistry slide. That includes going back to the actual physical processing of that slide. So which is a more complex processing than H&E, so therefore it should have a higher value.
Yeah. And it's just the production. I want to clarify that because all of these CPTs are for technical work. There is nothing involving analysis. It's just for the technical work of making the slide, the glass slide H&E, or making the immunohistochemistry, where now you go through the additional step of digitizing that. So that's what the H&E has one code, the immunohistochemistry has another code. It's just a technical code.
Okay, but question. Couldn't one code for scanning be added to each of those procedures? Or
I wonder. I ask myself the same question, and I answer myself. I know if I'm right, but that this is, how we like to make everything complicated, right? So this is the way of making it complicated.
Okay.
But actually, no, it's not the reason. It's that, no, what I actually told myself is that probably they want to kind of see where the CPT codes are coming.
Okay, how much of which is being done?
Yeah. Is everybody doing biopsies, scan? It's only big resections? It's only breast? No, well, there is no way to know that. But just to give you an example, that they want to probably a little degree of granularity to the data.
Giovanni, how are you using the new trial CPT codes right now?
That's a good question. I'm embarrassed to say that we are not. We're not using them.
But that's a problem. If we're going to get this adopted, that's a problem.
But you don't get any reimbursement for them. They're like just...
No, the reason is that we don't want to. The reason is because
okay.
when we made our happy plans to start, we were going to start January 1st. But unbeknownst to us was all these different steps that you have to go through to make those CPT. Think about it. Then we have to change all the workflow, make sure that, because we produce so many cases a day, there is no way that you're going to be inputting this to every case. So we wanted to do it in the most automatical way possible. And for that, we had to iron out a lot of little things with IT, with the coders, and also with the revenue people, because there are concerns that when you start billing with CPT codes, that the person receiving them doesn't know what they are, that they might just stop the process of paying altogether. And this is not with CMS, but remember, these are targeted to go to CMS and to the AMA, and they are going to be the ones making the decision when they go through and the value assigned to it. But this really goes to all payers, and all payers needs to be alerted of what's going on. And most of them, you will say, oh, they're payers, they should know, but they don't. Or at least the person doing the receiving that code might not be aware. Oh, these are CPT3 codes. I'm supposed to ignore those. They just don't know. So they put them in a pile, or I don't know. And then they get into this process of they need to be dealt with later. So in some cases, the hospitals, if they have dozens of payers, hundreds like us here at OSU, they have to make sure that's not going to happen. Otherwise, you will have all these little claims that are not addressed because they just went with information that the receiver didn't know what to do. So all these little things, that's the reason why we are not doing it yet, because we thought it was going to be just adding the CPT code at the end, and people were going to ignore. Then the payers were going to ignore because it doesn't. We had to kind of figure it all out.
Yeah,
so we're hoping that soon we're going to start using it.
It's an interesting dilemma. The CPT codes, for listeners that haven't been following this, they don't have value yet. They have to be used to show that they do have value. But what you're telling us
Nobody
is
wants to use it because they don't have value.
They can't use it right now because it's incredibly complex to new CPT codes. So we're going to have to revisit this again in 6 months.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you, it's not for us being a big institution, a state institution, it's being harder. All the ones that I know that are using them now are more compact labs.
I think we are wrapping up because we covered 3 awesome topics, and we'll have to revisit this. We're doing this every 6 months now. So that's the plan.
Yes, let's put on our calendars.
Do the hot topics, and we'll release that to you guys, and can't wait. So thanks, everybody.
Okay, guys.
Thank you so much.
High five.
High five. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.
Thanks so much for listening. You stayed till the end, it means you are a real digital pathology trailblazer. And if you're not subscribed yet to my podcast or Giovanni's and David's podcast, go ahead, click the link below, the bell to subscribe to the Digital Pathology Place, and the link below to subscribe to the DPA Beyond the Scope podcast. And I talk to you in the next episode.